All right, today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to deconstruct a massive ethical system, Christian ethics. But instead of just reading a bunch of rules, we're going to reverse engineer it, using its dictionary as a kind of blueprint to find the fundamental building blocks of a moral world.
So think about it for a second. How do you actually build a moral system from the ground up? I mean, what are the first questions you even have to ask? What are the core conflicts you have to solve? And what's the basic vocabulary you need before you can even begin to talk about what's right and what's wrong?
For this explainer, our single source is a dictionary of Christian ethics. But hey, don't think of this as some dusty old reference book. No, we're treating it like a toolkit. Inside, we're going to find all the concepts, the conflicts, and the arguments that have been pieced together over centuries to try and answer life's biggest questions. So what does it even mean to have an ethic to begin with? This dictionary doesn't frame it as some static rulebook filled with a bunch of do's and don'ts. It's actually something much more dynamic, much more alive. It's a conversation, a huge 2,000-year-old conversation about the best way to live. The whole point of the system is to take a set of core ideas and then really stress test them against the messy, complicated reality of human life. From our tiny personal choices all the way up to global politics.
Now, for any ethical system to even get off the ground, it has to answer a really fundamental question. Who's in charge? I mean, where does moral authority actually come from? And this gets us right to the core tension at the heart of the whole thing. On one hand, you've got this idea of autonomy, the belief that you, your own reason, and your conscience are the ultimate moral authority. But on the other hand, you have heteronomy, the idea that moral authority comes from somewhere else, from a source outside of you, like a divine command. So the question is, do you decide what's right, or are you told what's right? Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The dictionary doesn't just pick a side, it argues for something way more complex. It says, sure, you have freedom, but that autonomy isn't absolute, it's limited. And why? Well, because we're not just isolated atoms floating around. We are dependent beings, we are finite, and we are social creatures with real duties to other people that we didn't just invent for ourselves. Okay, so with that core tension in mind, we can start to build our moral vocabulary. What are the key terms, the virtues we should aim for and the vices we should try to avoid, that give this whole ethical language its meaning? The absolute cornerstone is love, and specifically the Greek idea of agape. Now, this isn't just some warm, fuzzy feeling. It's an active, affectionate concern for the well-being of other people. And the really crucial idea here is the neighbor, this principle that every other person has a direct moral claim on your attention and your care.
But love by itself can be kinda blind, and that's where prudence comes in. The dictionary defines it as a kind of practical wisdom. It's the intellectual skill that helps you figure out how to apply love in the real world. It's all about choosing the right tools for the job to actually get to a good outcome. So what's the total opposite of this other-focused love? The dictionary points right to egoism. And it's not just about looking out for yourself, it's excessive self-regard. In this system, it's basically the primary vice, because it completely undermines that foundational idea of caring for your neighbor. And we can see how the system starts to categorize other vices too. Take lust. It's defined not just as desire, but as a disordered desire. It's considered a capital sin because, in this way of thinking, it's a kind of gateway that can lead to a whole bunch of other moral problems, pulling your focus away from the well-being of others. So we've got our core tension and we have our basic vocabulary. Now let's see how these building blocks actually get used in the most intimate area of all, our own personal lives. This quote from the source is just, wow. It's incredibly powerful. It says that our physical bodies are not morally neutral shells. Embodiment is a moral phenomenon. Every single interaction, every action that involves our bodies puts our very personhood at stake. See, morality isn't just something in our heads. It's lived out, right here, in the flesh. And this ethical lens, it also changes how we see institutions. When it looks at marriage, for instance, the dictionary really prefers the term covenant over contract. So why is that? Well, because a contract is seen as pretty individualistic. It's an agreement of convenience. A covenant, on the other hand, implies something much, much deeper, a binding, profound, and relational promise. So these principles apply to our personal lives, for sure. But how do these scale up to society as a whole?
Let's take a look at how these same building blocks, love for neighbor, prudence, the rejection of egoism, are used to build ethical frameworks for really complex public issues. Okay, take the just war tradition. It's often misunderstood as a way to justify war, but it's really an attempt to drastically limit it. The dictionary lays out these super strict conditions. There has to be a just cause, like defending against aggression. The right intention has to be about protecting the innocent. That's an act of agape for your neighbor. The force used must be proportional, which is a clear use of prudence, and so crucially, it has to be waged in the right spirit, without any hatred. But what about nonviolent action? The source actually traces the history of the boycott, all the way from 19th century Ireland to its use against apartheid in South Africa. It's framed as this really powerful moral tool, a collective, nonviolent way for a whole society to express its conscience and put pressure on institutions to fix an injustice. This ethical tradition is also still evolving. The dictionary highlights a more modern movement, like liberation theology. And what's fascinating here is the shift in focus. It argues that ethics isn't just about thinking the right thoughts. It's about actively doing the truth, getting involved in the real concrete struggle for justice and liberation for the oppressed. And the dictionary doesn't shy away from engaging with secular political ideas either. It includes this absolutely stunning definition of liberalism from Ortega y Gasset. Liberalism, in this view, isn't about the power of the majority. It's the exact opposite. It's the grace that the majority extends to protect the minority. I mean, that's a profoundly ethical, other-regarding vision of society. So, after assembling all of these building blocks, from the core tension between self and authority, to the vocabulary of virtue, to how it's all applied in our personal and public lives, what does this ethical toolkit actually build in the end? Well, the conclusion offered by our source is really a defense of tradition itself. It argues that tradition and critical reason are not enemies. In fact, a living tradition is the necessary embodiment of critical reason. It's the ongoing, centuries-long process of testing, refining, and applying ideas in the real world. And that leaves us with one final big question. In our own lives, in a world that's changing so incredibly fast, what is the role of an ancient ethical toolkit like this one? Can these old building blocks still help us construct a moral life today? Thanks for joining us.